So, the new iPad lineup has been out for over a month at the time of making this video. I've been planning on getting one since last year cause look at my old iPad. But I held off back then, waiting for new versions. The wait's been long, but now the 2024 refresh has arrived, and I had my eye on the larger iPad Pro initially, mainly due to the screen size. But even from the rumors, there was plenty of talk about a bigger iPad Air. And after doing some research and listing my priorities, I finally got the 13-inch iPad Air, convincing myself that the Pro version isn't so worth it for me, especially after that price hike. Having spent a good amount of time with this new iPad Air, is it worth the asking price? How well does it hold up day to day? And does it incorporate well into a designer's workflow? Last but not least, who's it really for? Let's find out, shall we? So on the hardware side, I'm sure you're all familiar with the design by now. It feels reassuringly great in the hand. It can become just a little bit too much when you're holding it up for long, but it feels like a good size for me to get designs and sketches down. And one of the reasons I picked up the thicker iPad Air over the crazy thin Pro is because I've heard of those horror stories of people finding their iPads warping or bending over time, though that could just be a few rare cases. The front camera is on the horizontal side now, so that's good. You get the Touch ID, which I personally find more convenient in many use cases instead of Face ID. The volume buttons change according to the screen's rotation, which I find annoying because I'm so used to the old static arrangement from my previous iPad. The USB-C port is quite handy and handles lots of things like docks and more, but it isn't Thunderbolt 3 like the Pro has. Oh, and in the box you get the usual papers, charger, and a USB-C cable in the box. No more stickers though. Specs wise, this is a 256 gig version, a step up from the default 128, which I actually think should be enough for casual users. The M2 chip now runs the show. Everything is fast and fluid, but of course it is. It's very well optimized. You get 8 gigs of RAM as well. The display on this iPad Air is pretty great. Now, great with an asterisk, because if you're coming from a Pro, you've already be spoiled by their decked out XDR displays, of course, but I don't really notice it on a daily basis, even when I'm using with my MacBook Pro, which does. It's still pretty color accurate and sharp. The brightness tops out at 600 nits for this bigger version. You can use it under cloudy skies outside, but not so great under sunny conditions. The bigger, more spacious screen is why I picked this one. It just makes me more productive. My old iPad Pro is a 9.7-inch device and it feels claustrophobic. On the sides, you get 4 speakers. The iPads have had very decent speakers for their size for a long time now, and this doesn't disappoint either. Sure, you probably won't replace your desk speakers with it, but it does the job quite well. What isn't doing it for me though is the lack of a headphone jack. I know, it's getting old, but I'm still gonna complain about it because a lot of people, including myself, still use it all the time. Now I have to keep my wireless buds with me unless I want to use up the only charging port. Now that camera on the back is an embarrassment. The output is pretty poor and I think it shouldn't be on a device this expensive. Since the front camera is on top when you're in landscape mode, it should help with video calls. You can tell they put more effort into the front camera on this device. I want to talk a bit about the new Pencil Pro here. This new iPad Air and the Pros work with either the Pencil Pro or the USB-C pencil. They won't work with older pencils because, of course not, this is Apple we're talking about. Anyways, the Pencil Pro comes in this interesting box with artwork that says Pro on it. It still charges like its predecessors on the side above the camera. It has a matte surface which is very nice and premium to the touch. It's not glossy anymore like the old pencil. It still rolls though, and I'm not so keen on its odd flat side. It feels a bit weird against my fingers. It's got a haptic motor inside to let you know when you squeeze it for additional functions. You can also double tap it to swap tools in your app of choice. You can rotate it to rotate the brush in real time, and my favorite feature, that little fake shadow that shows your tilt in supported apps. On a more serious note, I seem to notice a slightly faster battery drain on this one compared to the old one, maybe because of the motor inside. Still waiting for app developers to take full advantage of these new functions. It's early days and all, but unless you're really sure you'll be taking advantage of the features it offers, I think it's not worth getting. Apple's been touting their iPads as a PC replacement of sorts for casual and pro users for a while now. I'll come back to that later. But what's it like to use on a daily basis? Well, I'm not a pro tech reviewer, so I won't throw benchmarks and tests at you. I only make reviews for stuff I actually use day to day. And this thing has been a very helpful addition to my workflow. I've taken advantage of the bigger screen to take notes, read books and use the Notes app side by side, sketching, draft designing, sometimes using it as a sidecar to the MacBook and more. Because macOS and iPadOS communicate with each other well, it's been a breeze most of the time. On its own, it comes close to being a PC replacement, just not there yet in some crucial areas like file management, for example. On less busy days, the iPad, a keyboard, and my phone is all I need to complete my daily checklist. Doing admin tasks, replying emails on it, making wireframes and sketches in Figma, photo touch-ups, using the browser for research, gathering inspiration, ideas, browsing sites. That's what the iPad does very well for most of the time for me. You don't see any performance issues with it. It's future-proof for the next 5 years, at least for most users. I even edited some parts of this review on it, but just couldn't get used to the workflow. What I'm saying is, you can do all the creative stuff you might want on the Air. You don't need the Pro. With the M2 chip inside, you rarely see any performance issues on demanding games, if ever. If you like gaming on the iPad, this one won't disappoint you. I thought I might get back to logo design on this device thanks to the big screen, but I just find myself swamped with web design these days, unfortunately. Now, on the PC replacement side of things, no, it doesn't work for me, and that's not the machine's fault. It's the OS's fault. I've waited till the iPad OS features were announced in WWDC 2024 to settle this review script, just to see if it's gonna be a game changer. Well, hold your breath no longer, my friend. It won't be. Don't get me wrong, you can do so many productivity-related tasks on an iPad, but even rudimentary tasks can get finicky quickly. Case in point, the old Files app is too limited and doesn't even have an eject function for your flash drive or external SSD. You're liable to end up corrupting some data by accident when removing it, and surprise, you need a Mac or a PC to fix that now. It doesn't work like a traditional files management system, and the mouse function, which is required for professional precision-dependent work, is added on as an afterthought. I think this is deliberate. They'll need to rewrite the whole OS to make it a true PC alternative, and Apple's never gonna do that because, let's face it, they want you to get the iPad and the MacBook. To its credit, the iPad does iPad stuff extremely well, and it excels at keeping you focused on a single task. You won't have too many windows open and multitasking like crazy, and limitation isn't always a bad thing. Writing this review script on it, for example, keeps me very focused. Battery life is good when you're not thinking about it. I just charge it up to full, and with moderate usage, which involves gathering inspiration, sketching drafts, watching YouTube, listening to lectures for a few hours at a time, it can go on for a day and a half without needing to recharge. With light usage, you can stretch that to 2 days. For heavy usage, you can still expect a day's worth of power. Isn't it ironic though that the MacBooks now last longer than iPads? So, who's this iPad Air really for? You know, it's gotten a bit murky since they started adding so many products on their lineup. The iPad Air sits between the basic iPads and the Pros, and I picked this one only because of the bigger screen and support for the new Pencil Pro. If not for those, I'd probably have stuck with the non-Air iPad. This is actually great for students who take lots of notes and need the big screen. In fact, if you're considering between this and the Pro, I'd say stick with this one and you won't be missing out on anything essential. This is great as a companion device and a vacation computer. It's a bit infuriating because the iPad hardware-wise is very nice and makes you want to use it as a work computer so much. It's got everything going for it except for that OS, but Very quickly, you find yourself looking for workarounds to export a certain file type you need to export or jump through hoops, and the limitations become glaring. That said, if you use the iPad and its OS for what it can do, not what it can potentially do, I think you'll find it a very good device. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I'll see you next time.